Hi everyone, I just got done watching the first day of the Beatles Anthology 2025 version, as we now will call it. And I have a lot to say about it. And I don't know if this video should just be talking about the new Beatles Anthology alone, or it could be a combo thing where I talk about the Beatles Anthology 2025 and how Beatle fans are never, ever satisfied because I noticed online, even people who didn't watch the Beatles Anthology 2025 yet were already moaning and whining and bitching and complaining about things that they didn't even know yet or see. And, people who watch my channel regularly know that I tell it like it is. I don't pull punches. I say positive where I'm positive, and I certainly criticize, and I'm negative when it calls to be negative. But a lot of people say that Beatle fans just look for something to bitch about, and I'm really beginning to think that's true. And that might be a subject for a whole other video on its own. Okay, but let's talk about the new Beatles anthology. All right, now I'm going to talk about things here that I liked, things I didn't like. That doesn't mean that because of what I just said, I'm going to praise everything. Overall, I came away with the first three parts one, two, and three of Beatles anthology, the new one on Disney Plus. Very pleased, very pleased. It was a fun, happy, joyful experience. A treat for the ears, a treat for the eyes, because the audio was amazingly cleaned up, and so was the video. People have always said, "Oh, when are we going to get the Beatles anthology on Blu-ray? When are we going to get it?" And it turns out we get it, and people are still complaining about it. All right, look, it's not that it's Blu-ray yet; it's not available physical media, but it is enhanced. So I'm going to tell you that the first thing people were complaining about, sight unseen, was, oh, they're gypping us. What are the Beatles people thinking? What is Apple thinking? What is Disney thinking? Um, the first thing you notice is that the running times are shorter, okay, than the DVDs. For anybody who has the 1995 Beatles anthology on DVD, you're going to find out that, yes, it's true. The DVDs are longer, okay? Longer doesn't always mean better, and sometimes less can be more. I'll tell you a little bit here and there about that. I mean, I don't know the exact times, but, sometimes there's in each chapter there's been 10 minutes or more shaved off, okay? But you have to keep in mind something else. In 1995 on ABC, when the very first Beatles anthology was released, that was even less footage than we're getting now from Disney. So you're still getting more in 2025 than was shown originally in 1995, okay? Sure, when it's on DVD, physical media for home, of course, you're going to get a little more added. A lot of what was added, and not everything, but a lot of it was filler, to tell you the truth, I thought, or just padding. It was a better word. Um, Let me tell you, when watching this on Disney, all right, if they're going to cut things out, the first thing I thought to myself was, why do we need at the beginning the old familiar "In My Life" montage and the "Let's go back, 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 back" kind of thing? Hey, it's enjoyable. It's a nice, pleasant thing, but to me, that's just a kind of a collage of stuff that eat up the first several minutes anyway. If you're going to try to trim that, in my opinion, and just get right to the documentary. Okay, that's me trying to be fair here, but I got to tell you the positive things. Okay, as I say, beautiful picture. The picture is so gorgeous, I can't believe it. And people are always complaining about, oh, why can't they remaster and restore this and even the old footage? Why can't they get the old footage clearer? Now they do it, and I hope a lot of people appreciate it. To try to be fair, some of the clips, as beautiful as they are, and this goes for everything. It goes for the old vintage clips. It goes for the stuff in the 60s, but also in the 90s and beyond, whenever it was, or before the 90s even, when you had interviews with Paul, George, and Ringo for the anthology. That's beautiful too. I mean, a lot of sequences here with interviews, for example, new flashback interviews are kind of 16 by 9. They're now widescreen, and you see more in the image. Like I happen to notice, for example, when George is in the studio talking, instead of it being 4 by 3 like a square box like it used to be, you see more. You even see the TV monitor up next to him in the corner where he's actually, I guess, watching some footage. That's fun. Uh, so let's talk about the audio. The audio quality is phenomenal. And what I really like about it a lot is that when audio interview clips, not the visual ones per se. I talked about those already, but the audio interview clips flown in, especially John Lennon, uh, very brought up loud, very discernible and clear. There was one particular one I'll mention where, when they're talking about the name the Beatles and how John thought up the name the Beatles, what they used, and they still use originally, was a quote from John on a record album called Hear the Beatles Tell All. Okay, that was in the 60s. And on that album, he talks about how he was trying to think of a name like the Crickets that meant two things. When you said it, people thought of crawly things, and when you read it, it was beat music. Okay, that quote is still in there, but this time, thankfully, from the Hear the Beatles Tell All album, there was like a bongo sound that was always in the background. When John was saying this, the bongo sound is gone. Instead, you just hear John's voice with that great technology where they can do that and take out that background that's irritating. It doesn't sound like it came right off the record anymore. Things like that. And while I'm on the subject of John Lennon, let me tell you one of the biggest pluses in this, which is something I took away from it, was that John Lennon, this time in 2025, to me, felt very much a part of the whole thing. Because, of course, we lost John way back in 1980, but when 1995's anthology came, I felt like, sure, they used John clips here and there, but John was not really as represented. I felt like John really wasn't a part of it. And you could really feel, that, although Paul, George, and Ringo were still with us there, John was like way in the distance, occasionally a quote here, occasionally a quote there. I had a feeling that John really, really was on equal turf with the other three. I felt like all of them were equal here, and John, it's almost like John wasn't even lost to us. Of course, there's not as much video footage used of him talking back about it, but audio-wise, it really makes John a major part of it, and I like that about it. Now, another great thing that I noticed and people had talked about, I don't have the audio of Anthology 1, the new anthology yet, but I heard that some of the early tracks, like when they were just playing on tape, doing songs like That'll Be the Day and In Spite of All the Danger, songs like that, and even a little bit of an early version of I'll Follow the Sun. Those were so clear and so brought up in volume. It was fantastic. They never sounded that good, and I look forward to the day when I do get Anthology 1 on a CD, and the new one, and I can hear that. So that was really a plus too. But what I also liked is, people are talking about missing footage, that they made these shorter. I'm glad they took some of that stuff out, because one of the things that was like dull to me in the original anthology presentation, on DVD anyway, was all that excess stuff. They spent a long time in the DVD version showing you a tape recorder, because there's no footage of the band, and circling around the room with the camera and showing you all this and showing you all that. It went on forever. They used just enough here. They trimmed it down, and it works perfectly. Sometimes careful editing actually helps. You know what I mean? At parts where they edited things out, if they had to edit something, they did a good job of, like, maybe sometimes they had to make a song shorter, or they elected to make a song a little shorter, but in its place they put some good dialogue over the latter part of it to bring more awareness about what was going on. They compensated well. I thought the job was fantastic here. Video quality, as I say, even though it was great, there were a couple of moments, to be fair, that I thought it was almost too scrubbed. A lot of times people say that. They were complaining about Peter Jackson's Get Back, even saying that, the image sometimes looks so scrubbed, as if like there's details missing. All the grain is taken out. I don't usually get bothered by that. I thought Peter Jackson's Get Back looks phenomenal. But there were some times here, and I noticed them say when the Beatles are doing that Daily Echo performance, is standing in front of a sign that says the Daily Echo, and they're in black and white, and they're doing like I Want to Hold Your Hand, and they're doing This Boy, okay, two of the songs. It looked like it was so scrubbed that you couldn't see any detail in their face, but it was just plain white, you know. Um, but still, but compared to what we had, it was pretty good. So now, looking at my notes here, let me just see what else I wanted to talk about here. Some of the things that were missing from here, and I tell you the truth, I couldn't tell. When it comes to the whole anthology DVD presentation, I've watched it a bunch of times in the last, I don't know, I think it came out in early 2000s on DVD, but say the past roughly around 30 years or less. I've watched the anthology a handful of times, maybe, I don't know, 10 times, something like that. I don't know the whole original anthology by heart. So after this was over, what I had to do was I went back just quickly after I had 3 hours of the new one, which I liked. I went back and watched a little bit of the DVD of the first three parts, and I kind of speed searched through just to be sure. One thing that I was sad to lose, I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, one of the omissions that I was disappointed in was the fact that they cut down the Royal Command performance. To me, the Royal Command performance is one of the Beatles' crowning achievements. Excuse the pun. One of the best performances. All they have here is uh, doing Twist and Shout with John's, thank God they left in John's Rattle Your Jewelry remark. And that Rattle Your Jewelry remark, by the way, is also brought up nice and discernible and louder, clearer. However, we lost other songs, you know. We lost From Me to You from the Royal Command, and we lost Till There Was You. I understand they're trying to make it shorter and more concise here, but I'm so sorry to lose that. Also, during the Australia performance, we get All My Loving, and we get a little bit of You Can't Do That. We had more of You Can't Do That back in the original one, so I was sorry to lose that too. Um, let's see. Also, we lost things like when the Beatles are on TV and they put on their top hats and white striped suits and sing Moonlight Bay. They took that part out. Left the rest of it, you know, talking about Ringo or Bongo, as the joke is on there. I also took out a Big Night Out moment, which is fun, where the Beatles are introduced by there's a big explosion and the whole room erupts and the Beatles come falling through the walls all like charred up as if they got you know, a bomb went off. That's taken out too. Um, and session, but there's stuff like session outtakes. It was fun to hear the session outtakes originally, audio, in the original series on DVD. Now a lot of that's gone. Some remains, but a lot of it's gone. And it's okay because a lot of that went on way too much. You see, that's what I'm saying, you know. Less is sometimes more. And although they still use a lot of that audio sessions, outtake stuff, uh, you know, it's not too laborious. And I should also mention that there's new stuff here. Even though we lost old stuff, there are occasionally new things that we haven't seen or heard in here. So it's like you're losing some stuff, but you're gaining some other stuff in a way too. And they put it all together for a nice look and hearing that is like the best possible presentation. Okay. All right. Let me also mention, trying to be, you know, fair about this. Of course, we lost stuff due to political correctness. You know, of course, some things had to be taken out of there. They couldn't leave it in case anybody, you know, gets upset. You know, in the beginning of the show, it's funny when you see that great shot of the Beatles doing a performance of Help, and they zoom in with the Beatles anthology logo. In the corner, it says, you know, this may have some smoking in it. You know, be careful. You know, you have to say that. But some of the political correct stuff that was missing was, I don't know if it's all PC, you'd say, but they're talking about the audience, the crowd in Paris when they went to France. They expected there were going to be all these really ooh la la girls there, and George said, there seemed to be only boys. They cut it out where he said originally. I think he said originally they were like slightly gay boys, or I think he said, or you know. Yeah, and he wasn't. He didn't mean. I don't think he meant that as an insult, but that doesn't fly today. And then, of course, the line when you know the press asks the Beatles when they arrive in America, "Are you all bald? Did you have to wear those wigs?" And then John says, "Yeah, we're all bald." Yeah, he says, and deaf and dumb too. Of course, you can't use that. And I was wondering, of course, they're going to take out John's clap your hands and stamp your feet, kind of what they call his spastic act. Well, the funny thing is, they did cut out one time where he does it, but if you look close during a kind of a scene more towards a side view, John does do it. He does do it. He doesn't say it, but he does the motions a little bit. So they kind of compromised, either that or maybe somebody fell asleep at the switch and one of them flew past you and you missed it. I don't know, but that was it. And one other thing I noticed was that when Ringo comes back to join the Beatles in Australia after he had his tonsils out, and Jimmy Nicol filled in. When he comes back, originally Ringo's on a balcony and the crowd's cheering Ringo, and he just gives them a salute with his arm. That was taken down. He didn't mean nothing by that, but, okay, we can't use that. So that's some of the stuff that's gone. I'm going to kind of wrap this up. Complainers have been saying things like I've heard that they're complaining, oh, they took out a lot of fan noise during some of the live performances. Why'd they do that? And I'm thinking again, I remember when people were complaining and crying and whining because the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl album had too much screaming in there. They didn't like the girls screaming. Why can't they eliminate the screams? Now, I didn't even notice it, to tell you the truth. When I watched it, I didn't even notice. I heard later that some fans were supposedly whining because they took fan audience noise away from the performances. I didn't notice it. Now, that's it. Overall, I thought, again, to wrap up, this was a very enjoyable experience. When I put on the DVD, just to compare afterwards what was missing, the first thing that hit me was the old DVD looks like crap, okay? Compared to, after spending 3 hours on Disney Plus looking at this new restoration and then watching the old DVD full of scratches and blur and grain, this is much better. So what we got here is, and I'll complain a little bit about it, is what do we do now? Because now we got, different versions of the anthology. I try to watch the anthology once every couple of years in its entirety on DVD. Now we got a version from then and we got a version from now. The thing is, which one is going to be my go-to version? I can't see myself every year or every 2 years first watching the one on DVD and now watching the 2025 one again. That's the thing too. How do you watch both? Which one's the go-to? The fact is, there are some things here in the new one that are very good and worth watching. And this is, in some ways, this new one is the definitive way to see it. In other ways, you get a little more stuff if you watch the other way, a little padded here and there, perhaps, and the quality not as good, but yet you get a little more. Which one do you watch? Okay, that makes it more of a dilemma. Maybe I'll alternate. One year I'll watch the 2025, and the next year I'll watch the older one. Let me know your thoughts, people. I don't know if I'm going to do a follow-up video on the rest of the parts here. I don't know. We'll see. This may be the only one. I'll decide as I go along if I'm going to update for the other parts, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm definitely going to be here at least to talk about the new footage that's going to be on the new Chapter 9, which I hear is not all that right now from people who know. Cheers.